consideration of the issues in the bill, with senators debating this bill that has about 3 hours allocated for debate. Any amendments to this bill will be considered under the committee of the whole. And after that, the House is set to vote on the bill today, paving way for the disbursement of funds to counties. The senators are making their way into the chamber this afternoon to ensure that at least the House has 15 senators, which is the required quorum at the Senate for the commencement of business this afternoon.
Next order.
Order number 3, messages.
Next order.
Order number 3, messages.
Next order.
Order number 4, petitions.
Next order.
Number 4, petitions.
Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Next order. Next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Honorable Senators, I want to reorganize the business of the day. We skip order number 8 and then we go to order number 9 as it is appearing on our order paper. So, Clerk.
Order number 9, motion. Reports of the Select Committee on County Public Accounts on the consideration of the reports of the Auditor General on the financial statements, Volume 1 and 2 of the 47 county executives for the financial year 2023-2024.
Chair. A person, County Public Accounts Committee.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move the motion that the Senate adopts the report of the Select Committee on County Public Accounts on the consideration of the reports of the Auditor General on the financial statements, Volume 1 and 2, for Mombasa, Kwale, Kilifi, Tana River, Lamu, Taita Taveta, Garissa, Wajir, Mandera, Marsabit, Isiolo, Meru, Tharaka Nithi, Embu, Kitui, Machakos, Makueni, Nyandarua, Nyeri, Kirinyaga, Murang'a, Kiambu, Turkana, West Pokot, Samburu, Trans Nzoia, Uasin Gishu, Elgeyo Marakwet, Nandi, Baringo, Laikipia, Nakuru, Narok, Bomet, Kakamega, Vihiga, Bungoma, Busia, Siaya, Kisumu, Homa Bay, Migori, Kisii, Nyamira, and Nairobi City County executives for the financial year 2023-2024 laid on the table of the Senate on Thursday, 27th March 2025, and approves the recommendations of the Committee on the Financial Statements and Fiduciary Risk Assessment of the respective county executives for the financial year 2023-2024. Mr. Speaker, as I move this motion, I want to thank the leadership of the House and your office for granting us the opportunity to have a special sitting today in order to deal with a constitutional timeline. Mr. Speaker, Article 229 of the Constitution of Kenya requires the Auditor General to conduct audits on all public accounts, including county governments and their entities, and to submit those reports to Parliament by 31st of December. Mr. Speaker, once Parliament receives those reports, the Constitution requires Parliament to consider, to debate, and to take appropriate action within 3 months. I am happy today, Mr. Speaker, that for the first time since the enactment of this Constitution, this House of Parliament, this Senate, has risen to the requirements of Article 2293 and 2298. And Mr. Speaker, when these reports were tabled in the House, they were referred to the Public Accounts Committee, and the Public Accounts Committee has done the necessary interrogation and assessments and is able to bring a report to the House. Mr. Speaker, we have traditionally been used to dealing with backlog, dealing with financial statements for years and regimes that are past, and it has become very difficult for this House to ensure that there's accountability and those who are culpable of misusing public funds are dealt with while in office or in a timeous manner. Mr. Speaker, we had a few challenges before I get to the content of the report that is before us. We have two reports. One report is about 2,300 pages long, and it is the detailed report of audit issues identified in each county government. It contains the observation of the Auditor General, it contains the response of the management, and it contains the recommendation of the Senate. But the more useful report that I would wish to direct the members of Senate to is a 200-page fiduciary risks report, a detailed report that summarizes all the risks that were identified by the Auditor General in the financial year 2023-2024. Mr. Speaker, this report, in terms of drafting and authorship, it was led by the Parliamentary Budget Office, a directorate within the institution for physical interrogation of counties that failed to respond, failed to appear, and gave frivolous the documentation requirements of the committee, so it was deemed to be an unperforming appearance. And Mr. Speaker, part of the prayers we are making in this detailed report, which I will summarize at the end, is that these counties that were invited, they failed to appear, they failed to file written response, that the House directs that the relevant committee, the Public Accounts Committee, issues summons to compel their appearance. Because it cannot be that they require us when it comes to appropriation of funds to counties, but they show us a middle finger. When it comes to accounting for those resources. Speaker, ideally should be happening at the Senate, shillings to the counties. We play our part to send money to the counties, and the governors and the chief executive officers must play their part in ensuring that there's accountability for those resources. Mr. Speaker, this process that we are doing ideally should be happening at the Senate and in each of the 47 county assemblies. The Constitution has given us a concurrent mandate or jurisdiction. In fact, the timeline of 3 months is shared between the county assembly and the Senate.
Chair, Senator Kajwang. Senator Chalgei, familiarize yourself with the standing order 117. You should not stand between the senator speaking and the chair. If you need to consult those documents, carry them to your seat.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The county assemblies ought to have considered all these reports because primary oversight is exercised at the county assembly level. Mr. Speaker, in our consideration of the report, we did not come across any county assembly that had already considered the reports. And so it would appear as if our brothers in county assemblies have absconded their primary oversight role to the Senate. Part of the recommendations we are making is on how Senate can help build the capacity of county assemblies to be able to be the first line of oversight. Mr. Speaker, in terms of findings, the Parliamentary Budget Office tells us that the fiduciary risks that counties face can be quantified, and it has been quantified to 532 billion Kenya shillings. And Mr. Speaker, I know you will wonder that the annual transfer to counties does not get to 532 billion. So how is it that counties face fiduciary risks of that amount? If you look at that fiduciary risk report, there is a schedule that breaks down fiduciary risks faced by every county government. And I want to ask members to take an interest, go to the section that lists the fiduciary risks faced by your county government. Fiduciary risks, Mr. Speaker, is not just issues that come out of budget, but the other risks that the county faces, perhaps from litigation, the other risks that county faces, perhaps from unsettled liabilities like pending bills, contingent liabilities, legal fees, assets that have not been properly identified, and so there's a risk that those assets could get lost. Mr. Speaker, what the PBO has told us is that if county governments were to be grouped together as a commercial entity, then they would be technically insolvent, because in terms of potential liabilities, it far outstrips the potential assets that they have. So the fiduciary risk faced by county governments as at 2023-2024 amounts to 532 billion against an annual transfer of 400 billion. Mr. Speaker, when we come to the specific issues of misappropriation of public resources, the analysis of the Parliamentary Budget Office tells us that in that financial year, the Auditor General queried 87 billion Kenya shillings. Now, 87 billion Kenya shillings in a financial year is probably 24% of the money we send to counties. The Auditor General tells us that 24% of the money we are sending to counties is being misused. And Mr. Speaker, the specific issues that underpin the 87 billion is irregular expenditure, 39 billion. Unsupported expenditure, 49 billion. Unbudgeted expenditure, 7 billion. Nugatory expenditure, that is things like penalties and fines, expenditure that is avoidable, 9.5 billion. Unaccounted expenditure, 157 million. Mr. Speaker, it's a sad day that in the morning we are struggling to send 52 billion to county governments, and in the afternoon we are looking at a report that is telling us that 87 billion Kenya shillings that the Senate sent to county governments cannot be properly accounted for. Mr. Speaker, I'll give you a few examples. The irregular expenditure of 39 billion, if you go to Marsabit County spends 16.5 million on insurance for vehicles that are grounded. 16.5 million could probably sink 8 wells, but they pay that for insurance and the vehicles are not moving. That is in the report. Mr. Speaker, Nairobi City County spends 146 million Kenya shillings. 146 million Kenya shillings to pay salaries for former Nairobi Metropolitan Service staff, NMS, after expiry of their contract. Further, Mr. Speaker, Kilifi County pays 71.5 million to legal firms without proper authorization. Kilifi goes ahead and pays 13.1 million for upgrade of Shanzu law courts. And you know, the law courts and county governments are separate and independent. And so the question is, why would you spend that on the law courts? Wajir, Mr. Speaker, spends 25.9 million on classrooms in primary and secondary schools. And yet our brothers in the National Assembly have money for building those classrooms through the national government CDF. All that put together, Mr. Speaker, the counties, the country, and the citizens of Kenya have lost 39 billion. And Mr. Speaker, the number could have been higher if the PBO had quantified the issue of bursaries, which counties continue to give out, and yet it is a function that should be domiciled at the national government. When it comes to unsupported expenditure, Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General has flagged 49.7 billion, expenditure that cannot be justified. The Auditor General has been in the county for 6 months. The entities cannot provide supporting documentation. Some of them attempt to carry cartons of records and invoices and vouchers to the Senate. And Mr. Speaker, we have taken the position that if you could not justify the expenditure when the auditor is on the ground, then my committee and my colleagues, we are not auditors. We are not going to accept some of those things because some of them are cooked. Mr. Speaker, again, examples of unsupported expenditure. Mandera spends 148 million to purchase pharmaceuticals, and yet they cannot provide the supporting evidence. And I thought, Mr. Speaker, that was the easiest thing to do. If you purchase pharmaceuticals, be it from KEMSA, from meds, the documentary trail is there, the auditor comes, you should provide it to them. Again, Mandera spends 45 million Kenya shillings on legal fees without providing justification or providing the reasons for that. Kilifi, Mr. Speaker, spends 888 million without supporting documentation. Again, Marsabit, 599 million. Uasin Gishu, 414 million without supporting documentation. Mr. Speaker, let's call it what it is. That is theft. If the records cannot be found when the Auditor General is on the ground, 6 months later, Mr. Speaker, this House has been sanitizing theft and crooked behavior in counties. And we have brought a report to the House saying that this is unacceptable and action must be taken. There is also loss of money through unbudgeted expenditure. Mr. Speaker, budgets are sacred documents because it is a commitment between the governors and the people they govern. And it is supposed to be exercised through the county assembly. Nairobi spent 13 billion Kenya shillings, Mr. Speaker, without a budget. 13 billion. And you know, you ask yourself, where would the assembly be if there is such a huge budget variation? Because 13 billion is probably 30% of Nairobi's budget. Embu, Mr. Speaker, 448 million unbudgeted. Nyamira County, Mr. Speaker, the governor told us yesterday that the assembly is split in the middle. You have 2 speakers, you have 2 clerks, you have 2 messes. One assembly sits in the assembly chamber, another one sits under a tree and says that it is assembly machinani, and the governor chooses to send his budget to the assembly that sits under a tree, and not the assembly that sits in the assembly precincts. Mr. Speaker, this is madness. And I think that Kenyans have been tolerant for too long, and we now need to send out very strong messages and strong recommendations on this. Another wasteful means of spending public funds, Mr. Speaker, is what the accountants call nugatory expenditure. As I said earlier, nugatory expenditure is avoidable expenditure, penalties, interests, and fines. Mr. Speaker, Kisii County spent 1.7 billion on penalties and fines that could have been avoided. and those are penalties and fines to CPF, Lab Trust, and Lab Fund. Kiambu spent 414 million on penalties and interest. Mr. Speaker, I wish the House could direct that where a county government incurs penalties and interests that are avoidable, then the accounting officers should be surcharged. Personally. Because some people just sit on invoices, they sit on court orders, they sit on statutory contributions and wait for the interest to pile. Mr. Speaker, 1.7 billion in Kisii could do so much instead of lining up the pockets of these fund managers because of interest. Finally, Mr. Speaker, and these are what I call outright illegalities, unaccounted expenditure. The analysis of the Parliamentary Budget Office is that unaccounted expenditure in that year was 157 million. And Mr. Speaker, unaccounted expenditure is what it is. It is money has left the county, but there is nothing to show for it. Tharaka Nithi, 76 million, was charged on the retention account, but there was no evidence that it was used to settle retention and deposits as required by law. Tana River, 37 million, was used on fuels and motor vehicles, but there was no evidence of the vehicles having been bought. Wajir, 18 million to buy laptops and printers, but there was nothing to show. Isiolo, 17 million to buy equipment for an emergency unit, but there was nothing to show. Mr. Speaker, this we must call it what it is. It is theft. It is across the board, honorable senators, and I want you to look at those reports and you will be able to see what is going on. Mr. Speaker, the other fiduciary risk,
Mr.
senators.
Speaker. Order.
I don't know why they are jittery when I talk about the misdeeds of their governors. I am going to spill more.
Senator,
Mr. Speaker.
Chair, I think it's because you said finally, so you know they want to hear more, especially on their counties.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, the other problem, the other fiduciary risk, and as I look at the other fiduciary risk, I'll give examples of other counties. Mr. Speaker, the other fiduciary risk identified by the Parliamentary Budget Office is pending bills. The total stock of pending bills, as per the Auditor General's report, and Mr. Speaker, we have a problem because the Control of Budgets report does not agree with the Auditor General's report. And county governments sometimes cannot tell you what the exact pending bill is because they have set up task forces which then review the work of previous task forces. But according to the reports of the Auditor General, pending bills increased from 163 billion in the prior year to 179 billion Kenya shillings in this financial year. Nairobi leads the pack with pending bills worth 118 billion. Kiambu follows with 6.3 billion. Mombasa, 4.4 billion. Machakos, 4.1 billion. Bungoma, 3.5 billion. And yet, Mr. Speaker, this House passed what we call the Ledama motion that gave directives or directions on county governments on how to deal with pending bills. To date, we have not seen implementation of those very clear resolutions. Mr. Speaker, 24 counties have pending bills above 1 billion Kenya shillings. Now, the problem is that they are not doing age analysis. Because if you do age analysis, you might realize that some of the pending bills are 5 years and older. An example is Kirinyaga. Kirinyaga had a pending bill stock of about 1 billion. 500 million was 5 years old and above. It means that the governor has chosen to pay contractors in the current period and has decided that the Ndadi contractors or the contractors of the previous administration will not be paid. And sometimes governors say that they can't pay, they won't pay, forgetting that if there was someone with a valid claim, someone who did work, they can go to court and they can force a charge against that county. And that is why we said that the fiduciary risk in county governments far exceeds their revenue at 500 billion because of these things like mismanagement of pending bills. Mr. Speaker, the High Court sitting in Kitale made it clear that these task forces that are being established to review pending bills, to review HR, to review wage bill. The first port of call for county governments is their internal audit function. Every county has an internal audit function. Every county has an audit committee. And the Office of the Auditor General is available. And so the High Court made it clear that those task forces are illegal. So, Speaker, we have made that clear in our recommendations that we don't expect counties to set up task forces, but to use internal resources and also to comply with the Senate resolution on settlement of pending bills. Mr. Speaker, let me move very quickly to another fiduciary risk that cuts across county governments. The Public Finance Management Act requires counties to demonstrate fiscal prudence. And that means that wage bill should not exceed 35% and development should be 30% and above. Mr. Speaker, 16 of the county governments have wage bills in excess of 50%. A clear violation of the PFM, a clear violation of the Constitution, but every year we agree we send them more money because they give us excuses that they are former municipalities. They give us excuses that county governments came to provide jobs. Mr. Speaker, 35% is a benchmark. Do we deal with the law as it is or the law as it ought to be? The law as it is that the ceiling should be at 35. But we have 16 counties above 50%. Kisii leads at 60%. Nyeri, 55%. Nairobi, 56%. Mombasa, 57%. Laikipia, 55%. Homa Bay, I think 50 or 52%. I mean, they are all abusing the requirements of the PFM. Can this House resolve that for counties that cannot be fiscally responsible, we stop the transfer of funds until they bring a recovery action plan as required under Article 225 and subsequent legislation? That is a decision of the House, and we have made those recommendations. Could this House bring back the Fiscal Responsibility Index in the formula for revenue allocation? We used to have a 2%, so that these counties that have complied, only 11 counties, Mr. Speaker, only 11 counties are spending less than 35% on wage bill. Why can't we give them a fiscal incentive so that others can also work towards achieving the same? Mr. Speaker, a further fiduciary risk that's been identified across all the reports is legal fees. It was in the headlines of yesterday's publications. I don't need to say a lot about it. Now, legal fees has become the new conduit for embezzling public funds, and county governments are also not disclosing their contingent liabilities. So you find that you step into office as a governor, you don't know what litigation is in court against the entity, and someone just springs up with a court order. And we've seen cases where people have sprung up with awards of 1 billion shillings and upwards. Mr. Speaker, this issue of legal fees, perhaps we need a multi-stakeholder approach. And this is one area that I would be requesting that the accountability committees could sit together with the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee to get to the bottom of this rot and this mess as far as legal fees is concerned. Mr. Speaker, we have also cited issues of professional negligence. We have taken the position that if an accountant who is a member of the Institute of Certified Public Accountants and is in good standing prepares financial statements that are then disregarded by the Auditor General, that professional should not hold office and should be reported to the relevant professional body for disciplinary action. That does not apply only to the accountants. There are other regulated professions like members of the Institute of Procurement, Institute of Human Resource Management, and members of the Law Society of Kenya. We have made various proposals. You might see in the case of your county that we are recommending that those who prepare the financial statements should be disciplined by their professional bodies. Mr. Speaker, allow me to spend a minute to talk about systems used in county governments. We have a system called IFMIS. It is extremely porous. It is not porous by original, Mr. Speaker, IFMIS is an Oracle-based system, the platform that runs major core banking software and huge e-commerce applications across the world. In Kenya, IFMIS is porous by design. Is it by design? It is porous by design. People have built backdoors into IFMIS. And county governments are using IFMIS more of like a suggestion rather than as a rule. Mr. Speaker, the PFM requires the National Treasury to define and prescribe a system of financial management for counties. Now, counties can use IFMIS. They have accepted to use IFMIS, even though they don't use it properly. But where they draw the line is when it comes to revenue collection systems. They can use one system. From Treasury for financial reporting. But when it comes to revenue collection systems, governors have decided that they do not want to be dictated to by the national government because they want to buy their own little revenue collection systems that have algorithms that deposit money into their accounts. Mr. Speaker, this House must resolve that the Auditor General should do a special systems audit on the revenue collection systems across the counties. And Mr. Speaker, it came to a realization that even as we are looking for a single revenue collection system, the Ministry of ICT has built a system which currently Nairobi County is using on a software as a service model. You do not have to spend 70 million, which is the average cost of a system, to buy it. You probably just renting space. It sits on the cloud. And now the Treasury and KRA are trying to build another system. I hope it is not going to cost 104 billion like the others for the health authorities. But Mr. Speaker, we must provide guidance that the Auditor General has the capacity, it has a systems audit department that they must bring to this House a proper systems audit. Mr. Speaker, sometimes it is sad that a vendor is blacklisted in one county. I do recall, I think in the last parliament, there was a vendor in Nairobi, and this Senate made a resolution that that vendor was not fit to do business with the county government. He rushed to the next county and is now doing business in that county. We must bring effect to debarment of service providers who occasion loss of public resources. And so, Mr. Speaker, the weakness of these systems reflects also on poor on-source revenue collection. Mr. Speaker, almost all the counties were unable to meet their on-source revenue targets. And there are so many stories, but the underlying one is the weakness of systems, but there's also the aspect of non-collection of property rates. Mr. Speaker, I know that some parts of the country, when you tell the governors to prepare a valuation roll, they will tell you that the land tenure system is such that people would not want to pay more, or investors would be frightened. Mr. Speaker, I think Kiambu and Nairobi has had a problem in terms of updating their valuation roll. But from the reports we have, Kisii County is missing out on 546 million due to uncollected rates. Kitui County is missing out on 1 billion Kenya shillings. Kajiado County is missing out on 11.9 billion Kenya shillings in terms of rates that could have been collected. They don't even need to revise their valuation roll. They just need to apply the current one. Even though some of these, Mr. Speaker, are collections in lieu of rates, and this Senate needs to provide a way forward to help these county governments to collect those obligations. As I quickly try to wind up to allow members to debate, Mr. Speaker, the other fiduciary risk that we have analyzed there is on imprests. By the closure of the financial year, 318 million of interest was not accounted for across the county governments. Kilifi was leading with 90 million Kenya shillings in the hands of officers unaccounted for. And Mr. Speaker, remember, by the time these reports come to the Senate, it is 6 months after the close of the financial period. And so the officers ran to the Senate with boxes showing surrender vouchers, surrender warrants, and we ask where those items were during the audit. Turkana had 85 million of unsurrendered interest. Samburu had 39 million of unsurrendered interest. Mombasa had 25 million, and Kakamega, where Senator Boni comes from, had 18 million lying in the hands of officers and not surrendered. Interest management, Mr. Speaker, the PFM Act makes it very clear on who bears responsibility, and we have made those recommendations. Mr. Speaker, governance arrangements in counties. Many county governments don't have audit committees, and it seems to be deliberate because they don't want anyone to ask them questions. I think it was Kirinyaga that appeared before us. The audit committee is non-existent, And if there is no audit committee, the internal audit function, their plans cannot be approved because it's an audit committee that approves the plans of the internal audit committee. In fact, Mr. Speaker, there were close to 11 counties. There were close to 11 counties that did not have functional audit committees, functional internal audit function. There were counties that did not have functional county public service boards. Kisii was one example, where the former chair of the board became the deputy governor after this house did what this house did. And so the county public service board is non-functional, and so they cannot recruit, and they cannot sort out the many HR issues that they have. Mr. Speaker, we also have talked about prior issues, and this is one of the issues, Mr. Speaker, that the Senate has gone to court over. If you do recall, Justice Jairus Nga made the ruling that Article 2293, 2298 must be complied with strictly. But the Senate went back to court for a judicial review, seeking administrative reliefs to allow us to deal with backlog. What we are doing today is compliance with the High Court's ruling. In fact, not just the High Court's ruling, we are complying with what the Constitution requires us to do. But we've had about 10 years of bad manners, Mr. Speaker. And I think it would be responsible for the courts to say that if we did not comply over the last 10 years, that that expenditure now should be water under the bridge. We must find certain administrative reliefs to enable us to hold to account those governors, even in periods where the audit reports had not been considered. Mr. Speaker, in Uganda, they have put it in law. What happens when Parliament fails to consider the audit reports? The same way it has the county assemblies have failed. Because as I'd mentioned, perhaps it was only Kakamega County Assembly that demonstrated to us at some point that they were up to date in consideration of the Auditor General reports. But the rest, we have a problem. In Uganda, Mr. Speaker, if 6 months lapse after tabling of the audit reports and Parliament does not take action, the audit report is adopted automatically. It is just like the way we treat statutory instruments. If Parliament does not take action on statutory instruments within the 14 days or within the duration prescribed, they become law. And Mr. Speaker, we'll also be making recommendations that we need to amend our legislation, we need to amend our procedures to allow the audit reports to become law if Parliament fails to act. And Mr. Speaker, that then should give us a window to be able to deal with issues from past financial years. I want to come to a conclusion by making a few proposals on how we can do our work better. I must admit that with 2,300 pages, it is very possible that we may not have captured certain issues with the precision and with the sharpness that is required. Mr. Speaker, even though we adopted this report by consensus as a committee, we do agree that some of the recommendations could be generic. Some of them could be fairly timid in nature. In some cases, we are calling for administrative action, where it is clear that perhaps there was theft. In some cases, we are calling for regularization of processes, where the process was illegal ab initio. Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage individual members or members to look at their individual county recommendations so that we can, after this adoption, look at them and tie them up and ensure that they are enforceable. We must also change certain aspects in our standing orders. Mr. Speaker, if we are going to comply with Article 229, then this House must convene on the first week of January every year, once we have received all the reports of the Auditor General, so that they can be tabled, so that they can be distributed to the various committees established to allow interrogation in the month of January, February, and March. This year we had a problem, Mr. Speaker, and the House knows it, that the committee was constituted in February, and we're in recess in January and February. And so my committee and Senate Resources Committee has had a very short time to deal with the issues that have come before us. But if we plan well, Mr. Speaker, I can assure the House that in the next audit cycle, we'll be able to bring a much more rigorous report to the House. Mr. Speaker, we will be requesting the House, or we are requesting the House in this case, that most of our recommendations are based on written responses. The right to be heard is not necessarily the right to appear, and I think that has been established. But when you are relying on written responses, it is not possible to vouch for the authenticity of the records that are being tendered. And so, Mr. Speaker, in light of that, the committee and even the Office of the Auditor General cannot vouch for the veracity, authenticity, and accuracy of the records that have been used to support some of the audit findings. We are asking the House to allow us to conduct a further inquiry to ensure that those records that have been submitted to us as evidence meet the threshold. And Mr. Speaker, if they fail to meet the threshold, we are also asking that this House allows the committee to follow up with the relevant agencies, the DCI, the EACC, the OAG, the COB, and the National Treasury, to take action on perpetrators of illegalities and irregularities that have been documented in this audit report. Mr. Speaker, we are also calling upon county assemblies not to abandon their primary oversight mandate. We will be making detailed proposals on statutory amendments. Mr. Speaker, in my view, some of my colleagues have thought, why don't we amend the Constitution, Article 2 to 9? I do not think we should amend the Constitution. I think we should try to live up to the high expectation of the Constitution. And that means changing statute, changing our procedures, changing our standing orders. Mr. Speaker, it is possible for Parliament to be up to date. And perhaps the history, and I must say this, Mr. Speaker, when I became the chair of the Public Accounts Committee, I took over from Senator Boni Khalwale. For 2 or 3 financial years, he was fighting with governors in court, in corridors, in the media, and in committee rooms. They had refused to come. Again, Mr. Speaker, because of this 31st March constitutional deadline, in quotes, the governors have refused to appear before my committee. Only 4 of them have come. The rest have decided that they are going to file written responses. But, Mr. Speaker, what the Constitution requires us to do by 31st of March is to debate, to consider, and to take appropriate action. I am calling upon the House. As far as appropriate action is concerned, the right thing to do is that we will treat this as our interim recommendation, but the detailed analysis, the detailed inquiries can still be pursued by the relevant committees with a view to following up on implementation as required by the Public Audit Act. Mr. Speaker, that is our prayer to the House, and I just want to finalize by thanking all the stakeholders who contributed, the Parliamentary Budget Office for producing the 3rd version. No, this is a 2nd version of the Fiduciary Risk Report. Mr. Speaker, the 1st version was compiled by the PBO, but I would say largely authored by Senator Ledamo Lekina, who was my colleague in the Public Accounts Committee. I want to thank the PBO, the staff and the directorate, the clerks. Mr. Speaker, the clerks in my committee are some of the most hardworking clerks, because I've seen them deliver a 2,000-page document at short notice. Our stakeholders, the Treasury, the EACC, and the members of my committee, as well as the House, for showing confidence in us and for allowing us to carry out this critical and very sensitive function. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move, and I beg that the House considers our prayer that we follow up the residual matters within an implementation framework, and we cause and compel the appearance of those governors who think that they only need the Senate when it comes to allocation of money, and they do not need the Senate when it comes to accounting for the money. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move, and I would request my Vice Chair, Senator Mwaruma, to second. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mwaruma Jones.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa hii fursa umenipa ili kuunga mkono huu mjadala wa kuidhinisha ripoti ya kamati ya bunge ya uhasibu wa pesa zinazoenda kwa magatuzi. Mheshimiwa Spika, Seneti inaketi kwa sababu ya majukumu yanayotolewa katika ibara ya 96 ya Katiba ya Kenya ambayo inasema ya kwamba kazi ya Senate ni kulinda magatuzi. Mheshimiwa Spika, katika hekima ya waliotunga katiba yetu mwaka wa 2010 tulikuwa na serikali awamu mbili, serikali za magatuzi na serikali ya kitaifa. Mheshimiwa Spika, jumba ya Seneti ikapawa jukumu la kupitisha sheria za kugawanya pesa za kwenda kwa magatuzi. Tulishafanya hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kupitisha sheria ambayo inagawanya pesa kwa serikali ya kitaifa na kwa serikali za county inayoitwa Division of Revenue Act, na tukapitisha pia sheria inayogawanya fedha mara 47 inayoitwa County Allocation of Revenue Act. Mheshimiwa Spika, leo katika hiki kikao maalum cha Seneti tumejadili asubuhi yote ili kuongeza pesa kwa magatuzi zaidi ya bilioni zile zinaitwa conditional grants. Mheshimiwa Spika, pesa zikifika kwa magatuzi, wale wanaofanya bajeti ni watendakazi wa county ama county executive na bunge za magatuzi ama county assemblies, na pia wana jukumu la kutekeleza miradi. Wakati wa kutekeleza miradi, Mheshimiwa Spika, kamati za bunge za county na assembly yote ya county inatakikana kufuatilia ile miradi vile inavyofanywa. Na katika uangalizi, Mheshimiwa Spika, ama oversight, mabunge ya magatuzi yanatakikana kufuatilia ile miradi ifanyike kulingana na sheria, kulingana na bajeti na kulingana pia na vile wananchi walivyochagua miradi yao. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, katika uangalizi, mhasibu mkuu wa pesa za umma ama Auditor General anaenda kwa magatuzi na kuangalia zile pesa zilizoenda kwa magatuzi kama zimetumika vizuri. Mheshimiwa Spika, katika ibara ya 229 inasema ya kwamba mhasibu amalize uhasibu wake na kutoa ripoti kufikia Disemba tarehe 31 na kuweka hizo ripoti katika bunge. Mhasibu ameleta ripoti zake katika bunge la Seneti na amepeleka pia ripoti zake katika mabunge 47 ya assembly za Kenya. Mheshimiwa Spika, ibara ya 179(4) inakubalia Seneti iitishe ripoti kutoka kwa magavana ambao ni wakurugenzi wakuu wa serikali ama CEOs kuja katika bunge na kujibu maswali. Mheshimiwa Spika, kamati ya Seneti ambayo mimi ni naibu mwenyekiti iliandikia magatuzi yote 47 ambao ni watendakazi na assembly na wakaleta majibu yao. Mheshimiwa Spika, na katika ibara ya 201 ama article 201 inatakikana kwamba kila gatuzi litumie pesa katika hali ya uwazi. Mheshimiwa Spika, tukiita magavana walete ripoti za matumizi ya pesa ni kwa sababu tunataka kuhakikisha kwamba pesa ambayo inaenda kwa magatuzi imetumika kulingana na sheria na kusaidia yule Mkenya aliye katika magatuzi kupata huduma zinazofaa. Mheshimiwa Spika, vile mwenyekiti wangu ametangulia kusema ni kwamba kuna magatuzi kadhaa ambayo hayakuitikia huo mwito wa kuja kwa kamati yetu ya Seneti ila kuja kujibu haya maswali ambayo ni Isiolo, Kiambu, Baringo, Marsabit, Nyamira na Kajiado. Haya magatuzi yatapewa fursa ingine ili kuja kujibu maswali ya matumizi ya pesa. Mheshimiwa Spika, zile ripoti zimewekwa hapa ni 3. Ya kwanza ni ripoti ya watendakazi ama county executives. Ya pili ni ripoti ya county assemblies, na ya 3 ni ripoti ya uaminifu ambayo chairman ameita tayari ripoti, fiduciary report. Kwa Kiswahili ni ripoti ya uaminifu. Mheshimiwa Spika, tumepitia hizi ripoti zote na kuna masuala kadha ambayo yametangulia kujadiliwa tayari, ambayo yanaashiria kwamba pesa na mali ya umma katika magatuzi inaweza kuwa isiwe katika hali nzuri sana. Swala la kwanza ni ukosefu wa nakala ya mali na rasilimali za magatuzi, ambayo kwa kimombo, Mheshimiwa Spika, tunaita asset register. Wakati nakala ya mali ya magatuzi isipokuwepo, kuna uwezekano wa magatuzi kupoteza mali zao. Kwa mfano, ripoti ya magari mangapi yaliyo katika magatuzi, ripoti ya mashamba yaliyo katika magatuzi, Mheshimiwa Spika, na mashamba mengine hayana hati miliki. Hayo mashamba yako na uwezekano wa kupotea kwa sababu hakuna hati miliki kuonyesha kwamba hiyo mali ni ya county. Kile kingine ambacho kinaashiria kupotea kwa pesa, Mheshimiwa Spika, kulingana na hiyo ripoti ya uaminifu, ni kwamba kuna shida ya kukusanya ushuru wa magatuzi. Magatuzi mengi yanakusanya ushuru na yapeleki huo ushuru katika benki, Mheshimiwa Spika. Kaunti nyingi zinatumia ule ushuru wakati wameukusanya, ili hali sheria inasema wakati ushuru umekusanywa upeleke kwa benki ile inaitwa County Revenue Fund account, ndio sasa huo ushuru utumike kwa kufanyiwa bajeti pamoja na zile pesa zingine ambazo zinatoka katika hazina ya kitaifa. Mheshimiwa Spika, wengine pia wanakusanya ushuru bila kutumia utandawazi. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, wakati ushuru unakusanywa bila utandawazi, pia kuna pesa nyingi zinapotea hapo kulingana na ripoti hiyo ya uaminifu. Mheshimiwa Spika, lingine ni kwamba katika uajiri, kaunti nyingi zimeajiri zaidi ya vile kanuni zinavyohitaji, ya kwamba 35% ya fedha za kaunti zitumike kwa kulipa wafanyikazi. Mwenyekiti ameashiria akasema ya kwamba kuna kaunti nyingi zinatumia ama zimeajiri watu na wanatumia pesa zaidi ya 35%. Wakati tumetumia pesa labda 50%, kaunti yangu ya Taita Taveta iko katika 54%. Ni kwamba pesa inabakia chache ya kufanya maendeleo. Tunahimiza na tunasukuma kaunti zihakikisha kwamba zimefuata kanuni, ili pesa inayotumika katika kulipa wafanyikazi iwe ni 35% ama chini yake. Kaunti nyingi, Mheshimiwa Spika, zinalipa mshahara ya wafanyikazi kupitia nje ya mfumo wa IPPD. IPPD, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni mfumo ambao unatumika kulipa wafanyikazi wote wa serikali. Lakini wakati magatuzi yanatumia ama yanalipa nje ya huo mfumo, ni pesa nyingi sana, Mheshimiwa Spika, zinaweza kupotea. Na katika kamati yetu tunafuatilia kwa ukaribu sana ili kuhakikisha kaunti zote zinalipa kulingana na huo mfumo wa utandawazi. Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna uchunguzi na mapendekezo mengi ambayo tumefanya katika hii report, lakini vile mwenyekiti amesema ni kwamba tulikuwa na muda mchache sana, na nashukuru wafanyikazi wa Senate kwa kujitoa mhanga, kwa kufanya kazi usiku na mchana kuhakikisha kwamba hii ripoti ya zaidi ya kurasa 2000 imeletwa leo na bila kupitisha ule muda ambao umewekwa katika ibara ya 229. Mheshimiwa Spika, katika uchunguzi wetu tumeona ya kwamba kaunti nyingi zinatumia pesa, lakini stakabadhi za kuonyesha kwamba ile pesa imetumika kwa mujibu wa kanuni haziko. Kwa mfano, kama ni tenda imefanywa, mkandarasi amefanya tenda na ameleta makaratasi ama nakala za kulipwa invoices, lakini amelipwa na zile karatasi haziko. Mheshimiwa Spika, tuko na mapendekezo ya kufuatilia, na ndio maana mwenyekiti amesema muda ulikuwa mchache. Lazima kuwe na muda zaidi wa kufuatilia ile miradi ambayo imefanywa katika magatuzi, kuhakikisha kwamba hiyo miradi yenyewe imefanyika na kwamba wananchi wanapata thamani ya pesa, kwa kimombo value for money. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, tumejiuliza kama kamati, itakuwa kuaje mmefanya ama mmelipa pesa, lakini wakati mhasibu wa pesa ya serikali anapokuja kwa magatuzi kufanya uhasibu, hizo nakala zimepotea. Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna magatuzi mengi, na mwenyekiti amesema, ambayo haina kamati za uhasibu ama audit committees. Uhasibu wa kwanza ni wa kamati za uhasibu za county. Mheshimiwa Spika, tunazita internal audit. Zinafanya uhasibu, na ile mhasibu mkuu akija kufanya uhasibu hutegemea sana ile ripoti ya mhasibu wa ndani, lakini kaunti nyingi zimekataa kuwa na hizo kamati, na ni kwa sababu kuna mambo wanaficha huko ndani. Mheshimiwa Spika, sitaki kuongea sana kwa sababu mimi naunga mkono tu huu mjadala, lakini mwenyekiti ameongea mambo kama madeni ama malimbikizi ya madeni ya county, pending bills, ambazo zimelemaza maendeleo katika county. Mheshimiwa Spika, yale madeni yanatakikana kulipwa, na katika hii report tukiisoma ni kubwa, ndio imependekeza ya kwamba idara ama asasi za uchunguzi ambazo ni DCI na EACC wafanye uchunguzi, waone ya kwamba yale madeni yalitendwa kihaki, na kama kuna yale ya kikora, basi hao watu wahukumiwe. Kwa sababu maseneta ambao watataka kuongea ni wengi, sisi kwa kifupi kabisa tunaomba hii bunge itupe fursa tutembelee magatuzi, tuangalie ile miradi ambayo inasemekana imefanywa, kama imefanywa sawa sawa, na kama kuna thamani ya pesa, Mheshimiwa Spika, kutokana na fedha ambazo zinatoka kutokana na ushuru wa mwananchi. Mheshimiwa Spika, ningependa niseme kwamba serikali haina pesa. Pesa yoyote ambayo inaenda kwa magatuzi inatokana na ushuru wa mwananchi. Kwa hivyo sote kama wananchi wa Kenya lazima tufungue macho, ili tukiona pesa inatumika vibaya tuweze kuripoti kwa asasi za uchunguzi. Lazima tuumwe na zile pesa ambazo zinaenda kwa magatuzi. Mheshimiwa Spika, nikimalizia kabisa, asubuhi sikupata fursa ya kuongea kuhusu ule mswada ambao tuko nao hapa leo wa County Additional Allocations Bill ambao umechelewa kwa miezi 8. Mheshimiwa Spika, bunge la kitaifa wanasema ya kwamba hawataki pesa ya barabara iende kwa magatuzi, kwa sababu pesa ikienda kwa magatuzi inaenda kutumika vibaya. Mheshimiwa Spika, nani hajui kwamba ufisadi mwingi uko katika maeneo bunge? Waheshimiwa wengi wa bunge wanafanya tenda zao wenyewe. Nilikuwa mahali naongea na wananchi katika hadhara na mambo yangu ya uangalizi. Wananchi wanauliza, inawezekanaje mheshimiwa, siku hizi barabara zikitengenezwa zikiwekwa sementi zinakaa mwaka mmoja na zinaharibika? Zamani barabara zilikuwa zinatengenezwa zinakaa miaka 10, 15. Nikawaambia ni kwa sababu ya ufisadi na ulafi wa wabunge. Wale wabunge wanafanya tenda zao wenyewe, na kama wajafanya tenda zao wenyewe, ule ufisadi wa kuomba hongo unakuwa mkubwa sana. Sasa yule mkandarasi kama atakupatia hongo ya 20%, ni lazima aweke cement kidogo, aweke mchanga mingi. Kwa hivyo unapata barabara, Mheshimiwa Spika, imetengenezwa inamaliza mwaka mmoja, imetoa waya tayari. Kwa hivyo sote tukubali ya kwamba ufisadi uko ndio kwa magatuzi, na ni jambo la kuhuzunisha kwamba si huu gatuzi tuliolilia na kupitisha mwaka 2010 wa kupeleka pesa mashinani. Mheshimiwa Spika, sisi ambao tunatoka katika maeneo yenye watu wachache hatuko tunapata maendeleo, kwa sababu mnaambiwa mnaleta kura ngapi katika meza ili tuwapatie maendeleo. Lakini leo hii kwa sababu ya ugatuzi, pesa inakuja mashinani na magavana na MCA na wananchi wanachagua mradi yao wenyewe, wanasimamia mradi yao wenyewe, na miradi inafanyika katika magatuzi. Kwa hivyo kutokana na ibara 99 ya katiba, sisi kama maseneta tutasimama kidete kuhakikisha ya kwamba ile pesa inatakana kwenda kwa magatuzi imeenda kwa magatuzi, na tutafuatilia tuangalie vile imetumika ili mwananchi aliye mashinani apate huduma bora. Mheshimiwa Spika, napenda kuhamia hapo na kuomba maseneta wakubali kwamba tupate muda zaidi wa kufuatilia hii mradi ili mwananchi apate thamani ya pesa zake. Naunga mkono ripoti, Mheshimiwa Spika.
Honorable Senators, I propose the question that the Senate adopts the reports of the Select Committee on County Public Accounts on the consideration of the reports of the Auditor General on the financial statements, Volume 1 and 2 for Mombasa, Kwale, Kilifi, Tana River, Lamu, Taita Taveta, Garissa, Wajir, Mandera, Marsabit, Isiolo, Meru, Tharaka Nithi, Embu, Kitui, Machakos, Makueni, Nyandarua, Nyeri, Kirinyaga, Murang'a, Kiambu, Turkana, West Pokot, Samburu, Trans Nzoia, Uasin Gishu, Elgeyo Marakwet, Nandi, Baringo, Laikipia, Nakuru, Narok, Kajiado, Kericho, Bomet, Kakamega, Vihiga, Bungoma, Busia, Siaya, Kisumu, Homa Bay, Migori, Kisii, Nyamira, and the Nairobi City County Executives for the financial year 2023-2024, laid on the table of the Senate on Thursday, 27th March 2025, and approves the recommendations of the Committee on the Financial Statements and Fiduciary Risk Assessment of the respective county executives for the financial year 2023-2024. Yeah, sure. Just a minute. Honorable Senators, I have this communication to make on the visiting students from Sawagongo Boys High School in Siaya County. Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon of visiting 376 students and 8 teachers from Sawagongo Boys High School in Siaya County. The delegation is in the Senate for a one-day academic exposition. In our ancient tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to the delegation, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. Thank you. Because of the time constraint, within 30-40 seconds, maybe you can welcome the visitors from Siaya County. Senator Buru Oginga.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I take this opportunity to welcome the students from Sawagongo Secondary School in Game Sub-County of Siaya County. And Mr. Speaker, I want to tell the House that this is a very, very good school. It is a school which is in terms of secondary, it is a post-colonial school. But, Mr. Speaker, this school has performed very, very well. It has done very well, and I'm very proud of it, Mr. Speaker, as I stand here. Mr. Speaker, this school last year improved its performance slightly, but it had 12 A's, 86 B+, 102 B's, 99 B-, and 70 C+. Mr. Speaker, this is not a mean achievement, and that means that more than about 80% of all the students got direct university admissions. And we want to encourage them to keep on working hard. There is no replacement to education. Education is the enabler. Education is the equalizer. It is what makes you equal to the others. So you continue working hard, and you will achieve what Honorable Halwale here has achieved. He is a doctor, but also a very astute politician. So any profession can become politicians. Don't think you can only become a politician if you are a lawyer. You can take any profession that you like, and you can be a very, very good politician.
Thank you.
Honorable Bambua here is a journalist. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I welcome
Thank you.
Students and the teachers.
Yes, Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to persuade to Standing Order number 111 to move that debate on this motion be limited to 5 minutes for each senator. Mr. Speaker, we have a very difficult situation today. We have 5 motions which at the rise of the House at 6:30, all the work that our colleagues have done will be useless if we don't debate and consider them. Therefore, if there is a day that we must work like an orchestra and not like politicians, today is the day. We have to do this, Mr. Speaker. Allow me to explain just in 30 seconds what we must do, because this does not affect this motion alone. It affects also the other 4 motions. We have to agree, Mr. Speaker, that we divide the time among us ourselves, because all these 4 motions are speaking to matters of accountability in either our counties or county assembly. So we have to agree that when you get an opportunity, you speak to all the issues that are either related to your county and the county assembly, so that we schedule the time. It's now 3:46, Mr. Speaker, as such that we know at what time now the mover replies on one motion. We begin the next motion, Mr. Speaker, so that we are able to conclude on all the 5. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, it will be very unfair for our colleagues in public accounts who have worked extremely hard to bring us these reports, then we don't consider them. Therefore, I want to request that we limit to 5 minutes, Mr. Speaker, and also bear in mind that we have to do that on the subsequent motions. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Then Majority Leader, for the sake of the chair, then also you further guide maybe how many senators should speak on a particular motion. Because we have 4 more.
Allow us to consult with the minority leader so that we schedule time, maybe on motion 1.
Because if you leave it open-ended,
No, what you can do, Mr.
you can't
Speaker,
achieve your targets.
we can speak to motion 1, Mr. Speaker, say up to 4:20, motion 2 up to 5 o'clock, motion 3 up to maybe 5:40. I don't know, even because that takes it very long, almost 6:30. So allow us, Mr. Speaker, to consult with the leadership. Let's limit time first, then we come back to you with a proposal as a leadership. Also, final request, Mr. Speaker, if we can limit ourselves to the counties that at least are mentioned in the reports that are being considered.
Also, further guidance that in the morning, you remember we had the additional allocation to the county's bill. And senators and the QD up to 1 from 9 a.m. up to 1 p.m. So I'll first give priority to the senators who are on the queue and did not get a chance in the morning. Today is a special session, and therefore it should be fair to all the senators who left their holidays to come to the Senate. Therefore, I think that is very clear. Yes, Senator Mboni.
Mr. Speaker, very quickly, this is a place we find ourselves because of the court ruling, and therefore it is extraordinary. I want to beseech you, Speaker and colleagues, that we treat this as procedural motions so that it is moved, it is responded to, we put the question, then next time we shall be better prepared. I can assure you, as one of the leaders in the House, that it will not be easy to have quorum for us to go in division if we stretch up to 6.
Yes, Deputy Minority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, because we are just consulting, so perhaps maybe then to just improve on what Senator Halwale has said, so I don't bring members here and they do have no opportunity to express themselves on this matter, which is important. Why not amend what Senator Cheruiyot has said to 3 minutes, and then reduce the numbers from both sides to maybe 5? And if you have spoken on the first motion, then you don't speak on the second one, you don't speak on the third one, so you do just 3. Yes, and you just limit ourselves to the counties in the motion. Yeah, you don't.
Do we have that agreement? Have we built the consensus? Senator Mgeni.
3 minutes.
Give Senator Kongo Mgeni the mic.
Mr. Speaker, the only thing I wanted you to note is that this report captures all the 47 counties. So there is no county that can say that we are not, their issues are not captured. Sorry? All the counties are addressed in the report that was tabled by Senator Kajwang. All the 47. All the 47.
This one, but on the next motion and the next.
Maybe the next, but on this, the one of Kajwang, all 47 counties. I think I agree with your proposal that, when you are addressing issues of accountability, Speaker, it's not, it's good we take.
Senator, I want to listen to Senator Mgeni.
Mr. Speaker, sir, it's good we restrict ourselves.
Senator Chalgei, just hold on.
Mr. Speaker, for today, I think let's be fair and reasonable. We can't speak for more than 3 minutes if we need to transact on the business that is on the order paper. But let's find a way of bringing this business back to the House so that we give members adequate time to comment on issues of how counties are spending money. There's very little you can say in 3 minutes. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, Chair Sipak.
Mr. Speaker, in 2013, Chief Justice Mutunga delivered a ruling on the election petition, but delivered the judgment later. He delivered the ruling within the constitutional timeframes, but the detailed argument judgment came later. And I think that's what Senator Halwale is trying to say, that if we've got a constitutional timeline, we bring what, in my view, the ruling was a fiduciary risk report. Mr. Speaker, we've really tried to break our backs to even bring a judgment by analyzing each county, which might not be very perfect. If it is a view of the House to allow the committee to go back and do a proper detailed judgment through inquiry and county visits, then Senator Boni's proposal can be entertained, but to allow those with burning issues between now and the time.
Yeah, I think we are in agreement that we need to, every senator to take 3 minutes, and then at least 5 senators or 6 on each motion, every motion for the 5 motions that you have. And then the chair will be considering other issues, especially a county which is maybe on that motion, and then the chairs will be able to guide accordingly. Now we are taking almost 10 minutes to make a decision. Give majority leader the.
We are 30 of us in the House. If because there are 5 motions, and the time we have already agreed, want to request that you then further guide that we limit the speakers to 6 speakers per motion. That will provide an opportunity for everybody to speak, and it will take only about 2 hours, and we will have concluded. So that's a further guidance that we want to request of you, because then it will mean everybody who is in the House will get a chance to speak.
Okay. Fine. Then, no, I think we have now come to some agreement. Senator Chute. Senator Chute, what are you, what? Yes? Senator Chute. Senator Chute, what is your point of honor or clarification?
Mr. Speaker, allow me to speak, tafadhali. Honorable Speaker, what I was just saying is this: at 6 o'clock we have to go to the mosque. So, considering that we have a few of us here who are going to go to the mosque, let's limit on 3 minutes. That is fine with us. Yes.
Okay, so let's proceed now. I start with Senator. I said I will first give those who were not able to contribute in the morning. Senator Ososi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, first of all, let me commend the committee of CPAC for the great report they have tabled before us, which has very, very good information. Mr. Speaker, I think the experiences of CPAC committee are similar to the CPAC committee which I had. Issues of late submission of document, Mr. Speaker, which is contrary to section 62(2) of the Public Audit Act, is a common issue in all the counties. And I think it's a matter that we need to have a way of dealing with, even if it involves invoking the penalties under section 62 of Public Audit Act. Mr. Speaker, we have also seen a trend of inaccuracies, errors, incompleteness in financial statements that are audited by the Office of the Auditor. And this is because accountants or finance managers in our various counties are not doing their work professionally. And I want to agree with the committee of CPAC that it is time that these officials comply with the provisions of the Public Sector Accounting Standards Board, and where they don't comply, then we need to invoke the provisions of section 8 and 10 of the Accountants Act, which may also include getting assistance from the professional body ISPAC on dealing with the misconduct. Mr. Speaker, let me go to the report in reference to my county, Vihiga County, where, Mr. Speaker, going through the report, I am very sad as a senator of Vihiga County that a whooping 3.4 billion shillings which is just 2 billion less than our revenue, shareable revenue, cannot be accounted for. The amount is facing fiduciary risk. 3.4 billion shillings, Mr. Speaker, is not small money. And this is out of the following, Mr. Speaker. Non-disclosure of commission earned from payroll services. This is where they give services to SACCOs or to third-party people. A whopping 4.3 million shillings cannot be accounted for. Mr. Speaker, the
Remember, we have only 3 minutes. Senator Mudigi.
Asante Bwana Spika, menipa ruhusa niweze kuchangia kamati ya CPAC. Ile kazi wamefanya kazi nzuri. Ningeomba zile county zimekuwa na matatizo weze kufuatiliwa ndio waweze kufanya audit tena, waweze kuleta malisiti ya ile kazi hawakuwa wamelete. Kama county nimesikia ikitanjwa na milioni 400, ifuatiliwe ionekane hii pesa ilipotea namna gani, ama ni kwa sababu county office ilichomeka, lakini mpaka walete malisiti. Bwana Spika, tukifuatilia hivyo, asubuhi tulikuwa nafuatilia vile county itapatiwa pesa. Kamati ya finance ya Senate na unga mkono, kwa sababu niliona kama Embu County kutoka sasa mpaka mwezi wa 6 itapokea milioni 363, ambaye mambo ya manyumba ile ilikuwa njengwa, mambo ya wale wa health promoters watapata pesa, vile hiyo pesa itapatikana. Bwana Spika, ni kuna mambo ya ajabu, kwa sababu mambo ya parapara, Embu County ni moja ya zile county ilienda kotini iweze kupatiwa pesa ya parapara. Ni ajabu kubwa sana katika Senate, Bwana Spika, kwa sababu county zote ni kama hizi wameenda kotini. Kama Embu inafaa, kama mahakama itakumbali county ipatiwe pesa ya parapara, Embu County itapata milioni 211 na ward zote 20 itafaidika na hizi pesa. Bwana Spika, kama saa hii Embu County mvua inanyesha, unakuta magari kule masinani hawezi kutembea vizuri. Kwa hivyo naomba mahakama iweze kusaidia ndio magavana waweze kupata kesi ile inafaa, kwa sababu najua Bwana Spika, MPs wote wako na pesa ya CDF, wako na pesa ya parapara, wako na pesa ya pia ya stima, lakini sisi sote hakuna mtu anaangalia. Kwa hiyo Bwana Spika, ningeomba hata kama tunafuatilia magavana mpaka nyumba kuu ya Senate iweze kupatiwa nguvu ya kuweza kufanya oversight vizuri, ndio magavana waweze kurudisha zile pesa imeenda njia ile inafaa, lakini MPs wote mpaka wakumbali kusaidia county zote iweze kupata pesa, kwa sababu wakati tuko hapa sisi maseneta tunaongea mambo ya ukatusi na magavana pia wanapata matatizo. Kwa hiyo Bwana Spika, naunga hizi kamati zote mbili mkono kwa ile kazi imefanya. Asante Bwana Spika.
Senator Sifuna Edwin.
Honorable Speaker, I'm a very proud member of the Public Accounts Committee under the very able leadership of Senator Kajwang. During our meeting to adopt this particular report, we were given the definition of fiduciary risk by the Parliamentary Budget Office. Honorable Speaker, just a cursory search of the term fiduciary risk is defined as the potential or loss that can arise when an entity fails to work in the best interest of a people, leading to misuse, mismanagement, or lack of transparency. Honorable Speaker, in that report, you will see that the cumulative fiduciary risk exposure of all the counties, the 47 counties, is 532 billion. But out of that, the fiduciary risk exposure by Nairobi County alone is 157 billion Kenya shillings. Honorable Speaker, when we go through these reports, it brings me great shame as a senator of Nairobi to see that Nairobi is number one in all the wrong things. We are the highest when it comes to irregular expenditure at 32.5 billion Kenya shillings out of the 39.1 billion of all the counties, which is about 85 or 83%. Honorable Speaker, we are also number one
when it comes to unbudgeted expenditure at 12 billion Kenya shillings in terms of fiduciary exposure. Then, of course, there is a matter of pending bills. Honorable Speaker, out of the 179 billion Kenya shillings that constitute pending bills in the 47 counties, 65% of that, or 118 billion Kenya shillings, is the fiduciary exposure in the county of Nairobi. And we have gotten to a place, Honorable Speaker, listening to these entities, to the Auditor General appearing before our committee, we now need to know what the next steps are. I want the people of Nairobi to understand that even though the Constitution says that Parliament shall look at the reports of the Auditor General, we rely on other institutions to be able to take action. In the committee that I sit in, we have recommended prosecution of officers in over 150 cases, and we have had occasion to sit with the EACC and ask them to give us the reports about these investigations, Honorable Speaker. We have had officers from the DCI. We have made recommendations for prosecution of people. We have made recommendations to professional bodies like the ISPAC that regulates accountants, even lawyers who give wrong information or wrong advice to their executives, or even who collude with their departments to steal money through legal fees. Honorable Speaker, we need all these institutions now to come to the rescue of our counties. Even if you look at the total exposure on stalled projects, Nairobi is again number one. I want this Senate to help us in Nairobi, because if devolution works in Nairobi, it will work elsewhere. Honorable Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you. Good. Senator Mariam Sheikh Omar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I stand here to support the report from the Committee of PAC. Mr. Speaker, as I heard the chairman moving the motion of the report, the common issues among the counties are unsupported expenditure in fiduciary reports, 16 counties above 50 million. Mr. Speaker, most of the counties paid without supporting documents. Mr. Speaker, I urge the chair, the member of the committees, not to allow any supporting documents to be availed to the committees. And again, Mr. Speaker, the county government, that's the governor, the CEO of the county governor, to take action to the officer who failed to avail documents to the auditor under the PFM, that is 156 PFM account, PFM Act 2012. Mr. Speaker, the second one is the pending bill. Mr. Speaker, most of the counties, they don't disclose their pending bills. And again, pending bills is normally the first charge, and it normally accumulates all. Like Mandera County, it has 2.2 billion. That show they are not paying, they are accumulating the pending bill. Mr. Speaker, the other one is avoidable expenditure. Mr. Speaker, avoidable expenditure is like penalties, interests on the statutory deductions which has not been submitted on time. Mr. Speaker, the other one is installed projects and the poor workmanship. Mr. Speaker, some counties, the project because of installed because of the public participations and not involving the citizens, the people for their needs. Mr. Speaker, the other one is fixed asset register. Mr. Speaker, most of the counties, they don't keep their fixed asset register. That shows the fixed asset, the asset of the counties is unknown. Mr. Speaker, as the committee, the chair and the members of the committee make a follow-up on that so that they cannot, without the
Okay. Senator Olekina Ledamo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me begin by thanking the two committees, but I shall begin to thank the distinguished senator from Homa Bay for actually telling us what is going on in this country. Serious fiduciary risk. And fiduciary risk comes about when those who are tasked with the fiduciary responsibility fail to do so. Mr. Speaker, I've gone through the report and I'm ashamed of my own county because I've seen that when it comes to nugatory expenditures are those expenses which could be avoided. Expenses that if you pay your bills on time, you don't have to pay penalties. You don't have to pay interest. You don't have to pay legal fees. We paid a whopping 1.7 billion shillings in terms of nugatory expenditures. Mr. Speaker, if you go to Kajiado County, which shocks me also, is that there is about 11.9 billion which the governor could be collecting from rent arrears and paid rates. Instead of fighting other people, he could have been going to collect that money. Number two, the pending bills. I'm happy that my county has reduced. It has gone down to 763 million, but it's still a lot of money. In Kajiado County, it is over 2.35 billion shillings. When you look at the development budget, it is 1.4 billion shillings that has not been paid to developers. So essentially, nothing is happening. So, Mr. Speaker, the distinguished senator from Homa Bay, the chair of the Public Accounts Committee, has asked us to allow them to go after these rogue governors, to allow them to work with the DPP, to go and scrutinize and look at these expenditures. Mr. Speaker, if we do that as a House, we will be saving this country. We will be saving this country from these nugatory expenditures. We'll be saving these businesses that are not paid when they're supposed to be paid. Pending bills, we'll be looking at issues of fiduciary responsibilities. Mr. Speaker, if you fault or if you do not respect the PFM Act, and you are called, and I know the Kajiado governor was called to appear before the committee, he failed to appear. Instead of focusing and making sure that you're using the money rightly, you are busy politicking. Right now, Mr. Speaker, we want the committee to go after these governors and ensure that even if they have to be jailed, jail them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Joe Nyutu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity for me to also be able to say something about this very damning report from the Public Accounts Committee in this House, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I think I want to start by saying that our counties should be able to put their priorities right. Then, Mr. Speaker, the issues to do with the community health promoters, the issue to do with salaries for medical staff, Mr. Speaker, things that should be prioritized by the counties. And that is why we spent a lot of time here in the morning trying to see what we can do to see to it that there is even distribution of additional revenue, Mr. Speaker. And we cannot fight that hard to give our counties more cash only for the same to be misappropriated, Mr. Speaker, and most of it actually outrightly stolen by those that operate our counties, Mr. Speaker. It is very sad that there is no rationale in some of the expenditures that these county governments actually incur, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday in the dailies, there was a report of one county that spent 10 million in legal fees to defend a case where the claim was just 1 million Kenya shillings, Mr. Speaker. And that's why I say it beats rational thinking in some of the things that our counties are doing, Mr. Speaker, especially with legal fees. Mr. Speaker, when we talk about an accounted expenditure in our counties that people have spent money without accounting for it, that is outright theft. And I think I would also want to beseech this House to allow the Public Accounts Committee to also employ the services of EACC to be able to see that these criminal offenses, because it's criminal, it's outright theft, that, Mr. Speaker, legal action is taken against these counties that are expending money in that that careless manner, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, pending bills is a cancer that has been eating all our counties and indeed also the national government. That, Mr. Speaker, that is why there is a low circulation of money in the economy, because those that have these bills, Mr. Speaker, have borrowed loans, have taken loans which they are not able to pay. If these pending bills are cleared, Mr. Speaker, then everybody would smile all the way to the bank and to their homes, Mr. Speaker, because there would be money in the economy. And this is something then again that we need to arrest. But talking of Muranga, where I come from, Mr. Speaker, I think I would want to talk about the quality of work that counties do, because there is a report of a septic tank in a place in Maragua Level 4 Hospital that was completed, Mr. Speaker, but that was leaking immediately, attracting even claims from neighbors, Mr. Speaker. Mafaya dispensary in Gatanga constituency.
Last but not the least, Senator Mandago.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, first I want to thank the committee for doing a very thorough job on this matter, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to support the work of this committee, and Honorable Speaker, only on 3 areas. On the CAIPS, Honorable Speaker, where the counties and national government are partnering, we have counties who are given money by national government to the tune of around 116 million. For the last 1.5 years, Honorable Speaker, they have not been able to move, and those projects are not on course. Honorable Speaker, some counties are doing very well, and I agree with my colleague, Honorable Senators, that those counties that their CAIPs are doing well must now initiate the process of looking for investors and the products to be value added on those county industrial parks, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, on the matter of RLMF, Honorable Speaker, which is a very emotive issue, and I know as a House, we have outstanding matters with the National Assembly, Honorable Speaker. I would wish to say, Honorable Speaker, whereas I support counties getting their share of RLMF as was, and national government receiving their bid, Honorable Speaker, I want to persuade this House that the 7 shillings extra that has been set aside to finance or to secure some credit to enable national government complete the ongoing roads that we are going to stall, Honorable Speaker. I want to persuade this House, having been a governor, Honorable Speaker, that the majority of the roads that were done under low volume seal, Honorable Speaker, are actually county roads. And if those county roads are going to stall because this money is going to be shared, Honorable Speaker, I think as a country we may get a small share of that money, but we should not get the overall value of getting those roads done. I would wish to persuade my colleagues that the 7 shillings over and above that has been raised be actually used for that model, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, on the issue of fiduciary risks that we have seen in counties, Honorable Speaker, we want to thank the committee for actually exposing the areas where funds are being lost. Honorable Speaker, I'm surprised that in my own county of Uasin-Gishu, there is a variance in financial statements to the tune of 55,167,000. That is not even surprising, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the unsupported expenditure on fuel, oil, and lubricants amounting to 177,043,731. Honorable Speaker, I'm aware of this matter. In fact, vehicles that are not serviceable are being fueled, and that is the reason why they could not provide the work tickets. And I'm sure, Honorable Speaker, because I know even one employee of one of the petrol stations where fuel was being consumed.
Thank you, Senator Mandago. I now call upon the mover to reply.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply and thank all the senators who have contributed. As we approve 52 billion in additional allocations to counties, we must demand for accountability for the 87 billion that the Auditor General has flagged. And I want to assure the House that if the motion is adopted, that we shall walk to the counties with the EACC, with the DCI, and all the relevant agencies that are required to ensure that there is value for money and there is accountability. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 66.3, I rise to request that putting of the question on this motion be deferred until the conclusion of debate on other motions in the order paper. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
But you did not pronounce yourself that you reply. You went ahead to request for the...
Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply.
Then also avert what you have requested. And so the putting of the question has been scheduled. So let's go to the next order.
Order number 10, motion. Reports of the Select Committee on County Public Accounts on the consideration of the reports of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the 47 county assemblies for the financial year 2023-2024.
Chair, CPAC, County Public Accounts Committee, in the same spirit, maybe you'll save some time again as you move, and also the seconder to take less time.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the motion that the Senate adopts the report of the Select Committee on County Public Accounts on the consideration of the reports of the Auditor General on the financial statements for Mombasa, Kwale, Kilifi, Tana River, Lamu, Taita Taveta, Garissa, Wajir, Mandera, Marsabit, Isiolo, Meru, Tharaka Nithi, Embu, Kitui, Machakos, Makueni, Nyandarua, Nyeri, Kirinyaga, Murang'a, Kiambu, Turkana, West Pokot, Samburu, Trans Nzoia, Uasin Gishu, Elgeyo Marakwet, Nandi, Baringo, Laikipia, Nakuru, Narok, Kajiado, Kericho, Bomet, Kakamega, Vihiga, Bungoma, Busia, Siaya, Kisumu, Homa Bay, Migori, Kisii, Nyamira, and Nairobi City County Assemblies for the financial year 2023-2024 laid on the table of the Senate on Thursday, 27th of March 2025, and approves the recommendations of the Committee on the financial statements of the respective county assemblies for the financial year 2023-2024. Mr. Speaker, I wish to be very brief in moving this motion. In the financial year under review, 47 county assemblies were audited. 45 of them had a qualified opinion and 2 had adverse opinions. Embarrassingly, Mr. Speaker, the 2 county assemblies that had adverse opinions were Homa Bay County Assembly and Migori County Assembly. Mr. Speaker, we did not ask the county assemblies to appear before the committee, but we gave them an opportunity to submit their written responses. Their responses were verified by the Office of the Auditor General. My committee sat down and reviewed the supporting annexures and adopted the report that has been laid before the House. Mr. Speaker, you will notice that the fiduciary risks report excludes the county assemblies. The key issues that came out of the conversations or the audit reports from county assemblies, one was on asset management. Most of the county assemblies have not acquired ownership of the properties and the premises where the county assemblies sit. Mr. Speaker, there is one county assembly that has been successful in that, not in this financial year, but in the past. I think it is Narok County Assembly, which has been able to get title to the assembly premises. So this is a matter that has been flagged by the Auditor General over the years. Some county assemblies are still paying salaries outside the IPPD system. And Mr. Speaker, that is symptomatic of fraud, because when you pay outside the system, you're basically paying ghosts. Mr. Speaker, of importance to the Finance Committee is that a number of county assemblies are receiving more than 7% of a county's revenue. In regulation, under the PFM county government regulations, we had put a threshold of 7%. But Mr. Speaker, over the years, through the various instruments that the Senate passes, the division of revenue, additional allocations, we have revised the ceilings to an effect where the average disbursement to county assemblies today is about 12%, way above the 7%. The Senate needs to look at this. The Finance Committee needs to look at this. If the 7% in regulation is not sufficient, then let us amend the regulation. Mr. Speaker, we have seen weak governance in a number of county assemblies, county assembly service boards that are non-functional. Mr. Speaker, we need to tighten the law because what some county assemblies are doing, for them to control the finances in the county assembly, they impeach the speaker. And then after impeaching the speaker, they appoint a temporary speaker who will come from members, and then the temporary speaker takes over as a chair of the county assembly service board, notwithstanding the fact that every county assembly service board has a vice chair who ought to take over in the absence of a substantive speaker. And it is a matter that really is about good governance, but perhaps it needs to be captured in law to avoid abuse. Mr. Speaker, one matter that cuts across all county assemblies is their continued contribution to the county assemblies forum and the Society of Clerks at the table. We have no objection when it comes to the assemblies deciding which professional bodies or which society they should subscribe to. But these are public funds. If they are going to be transmitted to any other entity, that entity should be legal, and that entity should be auditable. And Mr. Speaker, that is a problem we have had with CAF. We are not saying that CAF is illegal. CAF is a proper association. The only problem is the continued remittance of money to CAF. And Mr. Speaker, when you quantify it, 5 million per county assembly by 47 counties is a lot of money. Fortunately, this House has already considered the necessary legislation to rectify this. Finally, Mr. Speaker, we have seen cases of pending bills in county assembly, and that is contained in the detailed report, as well as matters of outstanding interest held by members of county assembly. We therefore request the House. None of the assemblies appeared before the committee. They submitted written responses. The committee cannot vouch for the authenticity of the records submitted. We request the House to allow the committee to summon the entities that had adverse opinions and to invite the accounting officers of the other entities to ensure that the issues raised by the Auditor General are closed, and to allow the committee to liaise with other relevant stakeholders to ensure that illegalities and irregularities identified are addressed lawfully, and perhaps even to direct a special audit of the entities with adverse opinions. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move, and I will ask a member of my committee who has not spoken, maybe Senator Cherargei, to quickly second.
Senator Samson Chalage.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, and thank you, Chair. I think for the county assemblies, it's a straightforward matter, because county assemblies, Mr. Speaker, sir, concentrate more on recurrent expenditure as opposed to development expenditure. And while we, as a committee, as the chair said, we need these entities to appear to get the second bite to the cherry and be able to explain. The Speaker, for example, in Nandi County Assembly, the county assembly chambers is yet to be complete. So you can find in one financial year they are requesting only for maybe development of cafeteria, walling. Mr. Speaker, you remember there was an issue of county deputy, the speaker's residence, Mr. Speaker. So I think those are majorly things that, but on the issue of expenses in terms of recurrent and accountability, the issues of impress, Mr. Speaker, that still becomes a problem because accountability mechanisms within the county assemblies, Mr. Speaker. And looking both at the county executive in terms of financial statements and also through the county assemblies, Mr. Speaker, there is a similarity. Although, Mr. Speaker, you remember, and I think the MCA should be aware of this, that the Senate has already passed the law that gave them financial autonomy. I think when they will have CRF account within the Treasury, it will allow them, Mr. Speaker, to own the process. Because as at now, they depend on CCM Treasury to get their allocation. But that one does not absolve them from their accountability. And I think they must appear, Mr. Speaker, and looking, and I want to challenge counties in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, that they must do their oversight work as it should be. For example, in Nandi County, Mr. Speaker, under Governor Sang is the headquarters of corruption in Western Hemisphere of this world. Because looking at in the previous financial year, Mr. Speaker, there was a scandal of the payroll, and I know members know, Mr. Speaker, and that is why in that scandal, even close relatives of the governor were found in the payroll scandal, Mr. Speaker. And yet the EACC came with rat matters. They took computers. No one has been arrested, Mr. Speaker, including a close consecutive of the governor, Mr. Speaker. Secondly, even as you are aware, Mr. Speaker, There are many stalled projects and the county like car hire services. Mr. Speaker, Governor Sang moves around with a car hire service of 42.8 million. There is no car number. No one knows where it is hired from. I'm told it is from one of the senior cabinet ministers in this government that is hiring to Nandi. And you know, of course, who I'm speaking, Mr. Speaker, about 42, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Governor Sang pays 18 APs. 25,000 against 5,000 extraneous, Mr. Speaker. Yet Nandi is not Baghdad, where bombs are being thrown around. Nandi is one of the peaceful places, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I want to challenge county assemblies to ensure they do the oversight role. Mr. Speaker, with those bombastic, I beg to second, Mr. Speaker.
But you arrange the chair knows the cabinet secretary providing care services in Nandi. I'm not aware completely. Honorable Senators, I propose the question that the Senate adopts the reports of the Select Committee on County Public Accounts on the consideration of the reports of the Auditor General on the financial statements for Mombasa, Kwale, Kilifi, Tana River, Ramu, Taita Taveta, Garissa, Wajir, Mandera, Marsabit, Isiolo, Meru, Tharaka Nithi, Embu, Kitui, Machakos, Makueni, Nyandarua, Nyeri, Kirinyaga, Murang'a, Kiambu, Turkana, Turkana, West Pokot, Senator Wakoli, West Pokot, Samburu, Senator Wakoli is still learning. Okay, fine. Trans Nzoia, Uasin Gishu, Elgeyo Marakwet, Nandi, Baringo, Laikipia, Nakuru, Narok, Kajiado, Kericho, Bomet, Kakamega, Vihiga, Bungoma, Busia, Siaya, Kisumu, Homa Bay, Migori, Kisii, Nyamira, and Nairobi City County Assemblies for the financial year 2023-2024, laid on the table of the Senate on Thursday, 27 March 2025, and approves the recommendations of the Committee on the financial statements of the respective county assemblies for the financial year 2023-2024. Before I give senators to contribute to the motion, then also I make this communication about visiting students from Waso Muslim JSS school in Samburu County. Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon of 68 students and 5 teachers from Waso Muslim JSS school in Samburu County. The delegation is in the Senate for a one-day academic exposition. In our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to the delegation, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. Senator Zena, welcome the visitors within 30 seconds.
Thank you, Speaker, and I appreciate this golden chance to welcome my fellow young people from Samburu East, Samburu County to the Senate. I hope you're having a time of your life. I know seldom do we get young people from Samburu County visiting, and I would like to encourage more of you to be visiting so that you see these things for yourself. I'm very proud to see you here today because that means you have decided to take the bull by the horn and get to know what is happening up here in the city also. I truly welcome you, knowing very well that Walt Disney once said that all our dreams can come true if only you have the courage to pursue.
Senator Lengwe Rutubesi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I join you
45 seconds.
And the Senate to welcome students and teachers from Muslim Waso Muslim Secondary School in Samburu County. Today we are considering very important matters that concern our counties, particularly the reports of the Auditor General on how our people or how our leaders in our counties are using implementing programs that are funded using public funds to make sure that services reach you and reach the people of Samburu County. So once again, I welcome you and welcome you to the Senate and learn more about what we do, and I'll see you as you move out. Thank you.
Thank you. So, honorable senators, and I open the floor for debate. As usual, the 6. I start with Senator Oginga Oburu.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Your seniority has saved you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, this is a very, very important debate because this is one of our fundamental functions as a Senate and as Parliament to oversight the executive and to oversight generally the expenditure of public funds. Mr. Speaker, in Uganda they take it so seriously that in the Public Accounts Committee attended to, there is a policeman from the CID sitting together with parliamentarians. If a case has been presented and well proved, they now do their function of further investigations with a view to concluding those issues legally in courts. And here, Mr. Speaker, we need to do, I think we need to do the same, because there is a lot of carelessness in dealing with the resolutions of the House. Sometimes the House makes resolutions and they are not taken seriously, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, for instance, this issue of pending bills, it is an issue which is bankrupting many Kenyans. And I'm surprised that even in the assemblies are having the issues of pending bills. Mr. Speaker, the assemblies should be the forefront as the elected representatives of the people to lead the executive. Because we also expect them to do their proper function of primary oversight in their counties, Mr. Speaker, which we are also informed by the Public Accounts Chair that they don't do. They leave almost everything to the Senate and the National Assembly to do the oversight functions, which is primarily theirs. Mr. Speaker, I also want to emphasize the need for the counties to have autonomy. Because, Mr. Speaker, without the autonomy of these counties, the counties are dependent on the mercy of the executive. And therefore, effective oversight of the executive becomes an issue. It becomes difficult for them to oversight the people who are actually calling the strings of the purse. Somebody who pulls the strings of the purse is the one who calls what? Is the one who
Senator Oburu, I can give you 1 more minute to just conclude on your comments. Please give Senator Oburu 1 more minute.
Mr. Speaker, I conclude by just stressing the importance of having the autonomy of the county assemblies, and stress that they should continue to do their primary oversight, and that will make our work here much easier if they do proper oversight on their own, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to speak in a hurry, so I thank you very much for.
Thank you, Senator Oburu. Senator Chesang Alan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to support this motion. But, Mr. Speaker, as we continue sending money to the county governments, Mr. Speaker, I think we should be very, very keen on our role as the Senate to oversight, Mr. Speaker, And before we even engage in the roles in our role, Mr. Speaker, we have seen the auditor's report, Mr. Speaker, and as specifically, we have seen so many things I don't want to repeat, but we have seen the unbudgeted expenditures in our counties, Mr. Speaker, the pending bills issues, Mr. Speaker. We have seen the stalled projects. We have seen, like, pending bills, Mr. Speaker. We have over 600 million shillings and paid in Trans Nzoia County. We have seen, Mr. Speaker, fictitious legal fees that have been paid by the county governments, Mr. Speaker. We have seen, Mr. Speaker, illegal withdrawals of monies. Actually, specifically in Trans Nzoia County, you have seen around 120,142,000 from our hospitals, Mr. Speaker. And also we have seen 159,130,036 from our local banks, Mr. Speaker. Those are illegal withdrawals by the county governments, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, with this said and done, Mr. Speaker, myself, I'd like to urge the systems dealing with the corruptions that as we allocate these funds to the county governments, Mr. Speaker, that they should also work together with us to ensure that the public get value of these monies, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to repeat what Senator Oburu has said, and we should be keen and we should take this seriously, Mr. Speaker, that I don't know what happened with the Ward Development Fund bill, the autonomy of our MCS, Mr. Speaker, because this is where we start. And for monies to get to the the ward levels, to the ward levels, Mr. Speaker, we need this MCS because their mandate is to oversight the same way we do, Mr. Speaker. And when they don't have control of their ward-specific fund, Mr. Speaker, they are forced to jump wherever or maybe to leak governance assets, Mr. Speaker. And that is what is really affecting us. I withdraw, Mr. Speaker, but they are forced to do.
Senator Chisang, your time is up. Thank you very much. Senator Kamau Kidoko.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for giving me this opportunity to contribute into this very important report. Honorable Speaker, I want first of all to congratulate the team led by the distinguished Senator for Homa Bay because of the exemplary job that they have done of scrutinizing both the county governments and the county assemblies. Honorable Speaker, the issue of pending bills is like a thorn in the flesh, Honorable Speaker. The issue of pending bills has been a problem in most county government and county assemblies. Mr. Speaker, you will note that there was a time a popular motion was brought here by one of our distinguished senators, the Senator Ledama. And actually, Honorable Speaker, the motion was trying to highlight on how the pending bills should be dealt with. Honorable Speaker, we cannot be passing motions here. We cannot be passing things on the floor of this House, and they are not taken into consideration. Honorable Speaker, it seems that whatever we did with that issue of pending bills, Honorable Speaker, was not taken seriously, and nothing has been implemented. Honorable Speaker, I want to call upon the relevant authorities to make sure that the bills or the motions that we passed here regarding the issues of pending bills that are becoming thorns in the flesh, Honorable Speaker, is dealt with once and for all. Honorable Speaker, I want to agree with the Chair for Public Accounts Committee, who is requesting that he be given an authority, or this House allow him to be summoning those county assemblies that are not adhering to the summons that has been issued to them. Mr. Speaker, it is against the law for any county government or county assembly to be summoned to appear before the Public Accounts Committee or any other relevant committee in this House, and they fail to attend. Honorable Speaker, I am of an opinion that a very strict measures be taken against all those county government and county assemblies that sometimes, Honorable Speaker, see to it that they don't attend to summons that has been issued to them to appear before this House that has been mandated by the Constitution to take care and the interests of counties and its government, Honorable Speaker. With us, Honorable Speaker, I support.
Now with that, honorable members, I now call upon the mover to reply.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply and thank all my colleagues who have made their comments, and also to assure the House that if given the opportunity to follow up these matters, we shall do it in a manner that respects the authority and constitutional mandate of county assemblies. We know that they are distinct, we know that they are constitutional entities, and even when we are seeking accountability from the county assemblies, we'll be very, very careful not to cross the lines and to blur the independence of county assemblies vis-a-vis Parliament. Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply. And I also rise, Mr. Speaker, sir, pursuant to Standing Order 66.3, to request that putting of the question on this motion be deferred until the conclusion of debate on other motions in the order paper. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Kajwang. And on the request of the chairperson, putting of the question is deferred to the next sitting. Clerk, call the next order.
Order number 11, motion, report of the Select Committee on the County Public Investments and Special Funds on the consideration of the audit reports of various municipalities for the financial year 2023-2024.
Chair Sipik.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the Senate adopts the reports of the Select Committee on County Public Investments and Special Funds on the consideration of the audit report for the financial year 2023-2024 for Diani, Eldoret, Iten, Kapsabet, Kakamega, Kilifi, Kisii, Kinango, Kwale, Lamu, Lungalunga, Malindi, Mumias, Mwatate, Nyamira, Voi, Water municipalities laid on the table of the Senate on Thursday, 27th March 2025, and approves the recommendation of the Committee on the financial statement of the respective municipalities for the financial year 2023-2024. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that we have had a very rigorous 3-week considering various reports in line with the Article 229 so that we can beat the deadline of 31st of March. It was not easy, but I can say we have handled a significant number of reports for municipalities for the financial year 2023-2024. And I want to
Dad said. That's your favorite one right there.
There you are! Wanna go swimming later?
Holly's favorite. He's not here.
The dolphin we rescued is over here. All our other dolphins have names. Does he have one? Since he has to make someone, how about Barney?
Got it, Mr. Mills. Crazy environmental not see those eggs will cost us millions in fines. What do you think about buying that fish hospital? What are you talking about, the marine habitat?
What are we gonna do?
Dad's boss. He's not gonna build an ocean theme park.
Something sure smells fishy around here, Bernie. And it ain't the fish.
We gotta jump. Let's book it. Come on, come on.